6 months after humanity left, the Galactic Empire was dying and everyone knew it. Emperor Nexusvar sat in his empty throne room looking at reports that told the same story over and over again. System failures, economic collapse, social unrest, and the complete breakdown of everything the Empire had built over thousands of years. The Emperor, who had once ruled a galaxy, now ruled over ruins. Half the star systems in the Empire had lost power. Most of the agricultural worlds could not grow food. The communication networks that connected thousands of planets were failing every day. Emperor Nexusvar made the hardest decision of his 1,000-year life. He would send ambassadors to find the humans and beg them to come back. The proud ruler, who had once dismissed humans as inferior servants, was now ready to offer them anything they wanted. Ambassador Vorthmel was chosen for this impossible mission. He was the most skilled diplomat in the Empire, but he knew that no amount of diplomatic skill could undo 50 years of treating humans badly. He would have to find words that could heal wounds that went deeper than anyone had realized. The Emperor gave Ambassador Vorthmel authority to offer humans full citizenship in the Empire, equal representation on the Galactic Council, and control over any systems they wanted to manage. The Empire was prepared to give humans everything they had always deserved, but had never received. Ambassador Vorthmel took the finest ships in the Imperial fleet and set course for the coordinates where human ships had last been detected. The journey would take weeks, and he spent that time practicing the apology that tasted like poison in his mouth. When the Imperial ships finally reached human space, they found something that shocked them. The humans had not been hiding in some distant corner of the galaxy, feeling sorry for themselves. They had been building a new civilization that was more advanced than anything the Empire had ever seen. Human ships appeared around the Imperial fleet, and they were marvels of engineering that made the Empire's greatest warships look like ancient relics. The technology was clearly human in design, but it was centuries ahead of anything the Empire possessed. Captain Dalyun commanded the human fleet that met the Imperial ambassadors. Her ship was sleek and beautiful, with energy shields that glowed like captured starlight. The weapon systems were so advanced that the Imperial ship's sensors could not even detect. The Ambassador Vorthmel sent a message requesting permission to speak with human leaders. The response came quickly, and it was polite but firm. The humans would listen to what the Empire had to say, but they were not making any promises. The meeting took place on a human space station that was bigger and more beautiful than anything in Imperial space. The station was filled with artwork and gardens that showed the creativity humans possessed when they were free to express themselves. Ambassador Minho was waiting for the Imperial delegation. He was the same human who had announced humanity departure 6 months ago, but he looked different now. He stood taller, and his eyes held confidence that had not been there when he was serving the Empire. Ambassador Vorthmel began his prepared speech about how the Empire had made mistakes and wanted to make things right. He offered humans citizenship, equality, and partnership in rebuilding the galactic civilization that was falling apart. Minho listened politely, but his expression did not change when the Imperial ambassador finished speaking. Minho smiled, but it was not the kind of smile that meant agreement. It was the kind of smile that meant he had expected this conversation and was not surprised by anything he had heard. Minho explained that humans appreciated the Empire apology, but they had found something more valuable than Imperial acceptance. They had found respect for themselves. They had discovered that they did not need the Empire approval to know their own worth. The human ambassador described what humanity had accomplished in just 6 months of freedom. They had contacted dozens of alien species that the Empire had never met. They had shared human knowledge and received knowledge. In return, they had built alliances based on mutual respect instead of domination. Human scientists working without imperial restrictions had made breakthroughs that solved problems the Empire had struggled with for centuries. Human engineers had designed technologies that were cleaner, safer, and more efficient than anything in Imperial space. Human doctors had developed medical treatments that could cure diseases across multiple species. Human farmers had created agricultural techniques that could feed entire civilizations without damaging the environment. Human artists had created beauty that inspired everyone who saw it. Ambassador Vorthmel realized that the humans had not been weakened by leaving the Empire. They had been strengthened They had been held back by imperial prejudice, and now that they were free, they were showing their true potential. Minho continued his explanation with patience and kindness that made the imperial ambassador feel ashamed. The humans had built a civilization based on cooperation instead of competition. They had proven that different species could work together as equals instead of masters and servants. The galaxy was a big place, Minho said, and there was room for everyone to build the kind of civilization they wanted. Humanity had chosen to build something based on respect, understanding, and the belief that every intelligent species had value. Ambassador Vorthmel asked desperately what the Empire could do to convince humans to return. He offered them leadership positions, unlimited resources, and complete control over imperial policy, but Minho shook his head with gentle firmness. The Empire had taught humans an important lesson. Minho explained respect could not be given as a gift or offered as a payment. Respect had to be earned through actions, not words. The Empire had 50 years to show respect for humanity and had chosen not to. But Minho also said something that gave the Imperial ambassador hope. Humanity had not forgotten their time in the Empire. They remembered the individual aliens who had treated them well. They remembered the friendships they had made and the good work they had done together. Captain Dayun appeared beside Ambassador Minho, and she spoke about the future. She envisioned the human fleet she commanded was not a military force designed for conquest. It was an exploration and rescue fleet designed to help civilizations in trouble. She explained that humans had decided to use their abilities to help species that was struggling to develop their own technologies. They would share knowledge freely and ask for nothing in return except friendship and respect. The Imperial delegation was invited to tour human facilities and see what humanity had built in their months of freedom. The cities were clean and efficient, but also beautiful and welcoming. The research centers were filled with innovations that could benefit everyone. Human schools taught not just technical skills, but also philosophy, art, and ethics that emphasized the value of all intelligent life. Human hospitals treated patients from dozens of different species without regard for their ability to pay. Ambassador Vorthmel realized that humanity had become everything the Empire could have been if it had chosen cooperation over domination. The humans had taken the best aspects of imperial civilization and improved them while leaving behind the prejudice and arrogance. When the tour was over, Minho made an offer that surprised everyone. Humanity would help the Empire rebuild, but not as subjects or servants. They would help as friends and equals, sharing knowledge and expertise freely. The conditions were simple. The Empire would have to abandon its belief in species superiority and treat all intelligent life with equal respect. They would have to change their laws to guarantee rights for all species, regardless of their planet of origin. Human experts would work with imperial scientists and engineers to restore the failing systems, but they would work as partners, not employees. Human doctors would help train imperial medical staff, but the training would be based on mutual learning. Ambassador Vorthmel accepted these conditions immediately because he knew the Empire had no choice. The alternative was the complete collapse of galactic civilization. The humans were offering salvation to the species that had once enslaved them. As the Imperial ships prepared to return home, Ambassador Minho gave them a message for Emperor Nexusvar. The message was simple and profound. The universe was big enough for everyone to succeed and strong enough to support any civilization built on the foundation of respect. The Empire had learned that forcing others to serve them made everyone weaker, including them. The students had become the teachers, and the lesson was one that the galaxy would never forget. 3 months after humanity left, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The great chamber that had once been filled with proud alien leaders making important decisions was now filled with desperate voices arguing about how to save their dying civilization. Counselor Vexstar clicked his mandibles nervously as he reported that half the star systems in his sector had lost power. The insect leader, who had once laughed at human concerns, was now terrified that his own people would die. In the darkness, his clicking sounds were no longer arrogant. They were the sounds of fear. Lord Scales coiled and uncoiled his long body as he spoke about the medical crisis on his homeworld. Thousands of his people were dying from diseases that human doctors used to cure easily. His forked tongue darted in and out rapidly, which meant he was more scared than he had ever been in his long life. The bird alien with purple feathers spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper. Her people were starving because the farms that humans had designed were producing no food at all. She had to admit that her species might not survive another month. Without human help, Emperor Nexusvar sat on his throne, looking older than his 1,000 years. The ancient ruler who had approved the dismissal of humanity now faced the greatest crisis in the history of his empire. Reports came in every hour about new disasters, system failures, and the complete breakdown of galactic civilization. His advisors brought him data that showed just how dependent the empire had been on human knowledge. Every sector, every industry, every aspect of life had been touched by human innovation. The empire had not just lost workers, they had lost the foundation of their entire way of life. Prime Minister Kethkallen stood up slowly and said the words that everyone was thinking but no one wanted to say out loud. Perhaps they had been wrong about the humans, perhaps they had made a terrible mistake, perhaps humanity was not as inferior as they had believed. The suggestion was met with angry hisses and clicks from the other council members. They were still too proud to admit that they had been completely wrong about human intelligence and capability. Even as their civilization collapsed around them, they could not accept that humans were their equals. Defense Minister Korthane presented classified military reports that showed how much humans had contributed to imperial security. Captain Taeyong had prevented 17 major wars through his diplomatic skills. Human tactical officers had developed strategies that gave imperial forces advantages in every conflict. Military data was shocking. Human peacekeepers had been quietly preventing conflicts that would have cost billions of lives and destroyed entire planets. Human intelligence officers had stopped terrorist attacks that could have destabilized whole sectors of the galaxy. Without human military advisors, the Empire armed forces were losing every battle they fought. Enemy forces that had been easily defeated when humans were helping were now winning victories against imperial fleets. The Empire military superiority had been an illusion created by human tactical genius. Admiral Korgoth admitted that human military officers had been doing far more than just following orders. They had been creating the strategies that kept the Empire safe. Their understanding of alien psychology and their ability to predict enemy behavior had made imperial forces seem invincible. The economic reports were even more devastating. Trade routes that human analysts had optimized were falling apart as alien replacements failed to understand the complex variables that made interstellar commerce possible. Financial Director Morcatel presented graphs that showed the Empire economy in freefall. Currency values were crashing as trading partners lost confidence in the Empire ability to maintain stability. Stock markets had lost more value in 3 months than they had gained in the previous century. The Empire had built its wealth on human innovation and human understanding of economic systems. Without humans to manage the complex networks of trade and finance, the galactic economy was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. Businesses that had been profitable for generations were going bankrupt as they struggled to operate without human expertise. Manufacturing companies could not maintain quality standards. Service industries could not satisfy customers. Research facilities could not continue their work. The unemployment rate across the Empire was reaching levels that threatened social stability. Hungry and desperate aliens were beginning to blame their leaders for the crisis. Some planets were talking about leaving the Empire entirely if conditions did not improve. Emperor Nexusvar listened to all these reports with growing horror. He had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years and had never seen anything like this complete collapse. The empire that had seemed eternal was disintegrating before his eyes. The emperor finally spoke in a voice that trembled with age and fear. He asked his advisors what could be done to contact the humans and bring them back, but no one knew where humanity had gone. The human ships had disappeared into unexplored space beyond the empire borders. Intelligence Director Morflex reported that human settlements had been found in distant star systems, but they were too far away for normal communication. The humans had built new colonies with technology that was more advanced than anything the Empire possessed. The few messages that had been sent to human settlements had been ignored. The humans were Not responding to any attempts at communication, it seemed like they had decided to forget about the Empire entirely and build their own civilization somewhere else. Some council members suggested sending military ships to force the humans to return. But Admiral Korgoth explained that this was impossible. The Empire military was too busy dealing with internal crises to launch expeditions into unknown space. The humans had shown that they could disable Imperial technology in ways that no one understood. The same people who had once fixed everything could probably break everything, just as easily if they wanted to. Counselor Vexstar suggested offering the humans better treatment if they came back: full citizenship, equal representation in the Galactic Council, and control over the systems they had once maintained as servants. But even he knew that these offers might not be enough. The humans had been treated badly for 50 years. They had been called inferior and treated like servants. Even though they were the ones who made the Empire work, why would they want to come back to a place that had never given them respect? Lord Scales admitted that his people had been wrong about human intelligence, but he said it was too late to change. The past, the Empire had made its choice, and now they had to live with the consequences, even if those consequences meant the end of their civilization. The bird alien with purple feathers said something that made everyone in the chamber fall silent. She said that maybe the humans had been the real rulers of the galaxy all along. The aliens had thought they were in charge, but they had actually been completely dependent on human knowledge and human work. Emperor Nexusvar closed his eyes and tried to imagine a future where the Empire survived without humans, but he could not see how it was possible. Every system, every process, every aspect of galactic life had been designed by humans or improved by humans. The Empire had billions of citizens and thousands of worlds, but without humans to hold everything together, it was just a collection of dying planets floating in empty space. The aliens had learned too late that intelligence was not about having the biggest brain or the most advanced technology. Intelligence was about understanding how things worked, and humans understood how things worked better than any other species in the galaxy. The Empire had mistaken human kindness for weakness and human cooperation for inferiority. Now they were paying the price for their arrogance and their prejudice. The humans were gone, and the Empire was dying. The council members sat in their great chamber arguing about what to do, but they all knew the truth. Without humans, there was no empire. There was no galactic civilization. There was only the slow collapse of everything they had built on the foundation of human genius. The aliens had finally learned what humans were really worth, but they had learned it too late. 2 months after the humans left, everything was breaking down faster than the aliens could fix it. The agricultural worlds that grew food for trillions of aliens across the galaxy were experiencing the worst crop failures in recorded history. The beautiful farms that had fed the Empire for decades were turning into dusty wastelands. Botanist Hyunwoo had created farming systems that seemed simple but were actually incredibly complex networks of irrigation, soil management, and pest control. The alien farmers had watched him work for years, but they had never understood the thousands of tiny decisions he made every day to keep the farms productive. Governor Thexmerin stood in what used to be the most productive farm in his sector. The green fields that had once stretched to the horizon were now brown and dying. The automated irrigation system that Hyunwoo had designed was still running, but it was watering the plants wrong. The alien farmers could turn the water on and off, but they did not know how much water each type of plant needed at different times of the day. The computer systems had settings for hundreds of different variables, but without human intuition to guide them, the systems were killing the plants. They were supposed to help crop yields drop so low that entire planets began running out of food. Starving aliens rioted in the streets, demanding that their leaders bring back the humans who had fed them. Store shelves that had always been full of fresh food were now empty. Transportation ships that used to carry food now carried emergency supplies to prevent mass starvation. The soil itself was becoming poisonous because the alien farmers did not understand how to balance the chemicals that kept plants healthy. They followed the instruction manuals exactly, but the manuals could not teach them how to feel when the soil was getting sick. Governor Thexmerin realized that humans had not just been growing food, they had been conducting a complex orchestra of living systems that required understanding and intuition that aliens simply did not possess. He sent desperate messages to the Empire leaders begging them to find the humans and bring them back the industrial manufacturing. Plants were collapsing even faster than the farm's engineer Seojin had designed production systems that could make high-quality products quickly and efficiently, but his systems required constant human oversight to work properly. Production director Korvaleth watched his factories produce garbage instead of the precision equipment that customers expected. Assembly lines that had run perfectly for years were now creating products that fell apart as soon as customers tried to use them. The alien workers could operate the machines, but they could not feel when something was going wrong. Human engineers had possessed an almost magical ability to hear when a machine was getting tired or stressed. The aliens could only detect problems after they caused expensive failures. Quality control systems that had been designed to catch defects were overwhelmed because the alien operators did not understand what they were looking for. Human inspectors had been able to spot potential problems by looking at tiny details that meant nothing to alien eyes. Customer complaints flooded in from across the galaxy. Products that had once been famous for their reliability were now breaking down within days of purchase. The Empire reputation for quality manufacturing was being destroyed as alien workers struggled to maintain standards they did not understand. Factory production schedules that had been precise and reliable became completely unpredictable. Delivery dates that customers had counted on became meaningless as production lines randomly shut down for repairs. Businesses that depended on Empire manufactured goods began looking for suppliers from outside the Empire. The energy grid was experiencing catastrophic failures that threatened the survival of entire civilizations. Human engineers had designed power distribution networks that could automatically adjust to changing demands, but maintaining this flexibility required human oversight that no longer existed. Energy coordinator Zethgrel faced cascading power failures that spread across the galaxy like a disease. When one power station failed, it put extra load on neighboring stations, which then failed themselves, creating a domino effect that was impossible to stop. Hospitals lost power during critical surgeries, killing patients who would have lived if the lights had stayed on. Schools went dark, leaving millions of alien children sitting in classrooms with no way to learn. Communication networks that connected the galaxy went offline for days at a time. Space stations that housed millions of aliens began losing life support as their power systems failed. Emergency evacuation ships rushed to rescue aliens from stations that were becoming death traps. The Empire that had seemed so advanced was discovering that their technology was completely dependent on human knowledge. Transportation networks ground to a halt as traffic control systems failed without human operators. Spaceships collided in orbit around major planets because the navigation computers were giving wrong information. Cargo ships carrying vital supplies got lost in space because their automated guidance systems were not working. The economic system that connected thousands of worlds began collapsing as trade routes optimized by human analysts fell apart. Alien replacements tried to manage the complex flow of goods and money across the galaxy, but they lacked the pattern recognition abilities that made interstellar commerce possible. Currency exchanges that had operated smoothly for decades began experiencing wild swings in value that made trade impossible. Financial markets crashed as investors lost confidence in the Empire ability to maintain economic stability. Without human expertise, banks that had trusted Empire currency for centuries began refusing to accept it. The galactic economy that had seemed so stable was revealing itself to be an elaborate system, held together by human understanding of markets. Psychology and economics financial director Morcatel watched centuries of accumulated wealth disappear as panic. Selling destroyed the value of Empire investments. Stock markets that had grown steadily for generations crashed so hard that some trading systems simply shut down to prevent total economic collapse. Trade agreements between different alien species began falling apart as the complex negotiations that humans had mediated became impossible to manage. Alien diplomats who had relied on human translators and mediators found themselves unable to communicate effectively with other species. Wars that humans had prevented through careful diplomacy began breaking out as old conflicts resurfaced without human peacekeepers to mediate. Disputes the Empire military forces that should have been maintaining order were too Busy dealing with infrastructure failures to prevent these conflicts, the medical system was in complete chaos as alien doctors struggled to treat diseases they had never seen before. Dr. Jihoon and other human doctors had been quietly preventing epidemics and treating rare conditions that alien medicine could not handle. Plagues that humans had kept under control began spreading across multiple worlds as alien doctors failed to recognize the early symptoms. Quarantine procedures that required quick human decision-making were implemented too late, allowing diseases to spread beyond control. Psychiatric hospitals overflowed with aliens suffering from stress and depression caused by the collapse of their civilization. Mental health treatments that human doctors had pioneered were abandoned because alien psychiatrists could not understand the human approach to healing minds. The Empire leaders, who had dismissed humans as inferior servants, were now facing the complete collapse of everything they had built. Their pride had cost them their civilization, and they were finally beginning to understand that humans had never been their servants. Humans had been their teachers, their protectors, and their salvation. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. When the aliens had forced humans to leave, they had pulled out the cornerstone of their own empire. The empire was crumbling, and the alien leaders were finally ready to admit that they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. But the humans were gone, and no one knew if they would ever come back. 3 weeks after the humans left, the quantum research facility on Titan 7 started having problems. The big machine that made power for the whole facility began making strange noises that no one had ever heard before. The alien scientists looked at each other with worry because they did not know what the noises meant. Chief Scientist Rothorin had worked next to human engineers for 5 years, but he had never paid attention to how they actually did their work. He thought engineering was just about pressing buttons and following rules, but now with the humans gone, he was learning that machines were much more complicated than he thought. The power generator was the most important machine in the facility. It provided energy for all the experiments and research. If it stopped working, the whole facility would shut down. Rothorin looked at the instruction manual that the human engineers had left behind, but the manual was over 1,000 pages long and very confusing. The manual told him what to do when specific warning lights came on, but there were hundreds of different warning lights, and they kept coming on in combinations that were not in the manual. The human engineers had never needed to look at the manual because they understood how the machine worked in their hearts. Rothorin called his best alien engineers to help him, but they were all just as confused as he was. They could read the numbers on the control screens, but they did not know what the numbers meant. The humans had made it look so easy, but now they realized that easy things were often the hardest to understand. The machine kept getting louder and more warning lights kept flashing. Rothorin tried pressing different buttons, hoping something would work, but every button he pressed seemed to make things worse. He was starting to panic because he could see that the machine was getting ready to break down completely. Finally, the machine shut itself off to prevent a dangerous explosion. The whole facility went dark and silent. All the important research that had been happening for years suddenly stopped. The alien scientists sat in the darkness, wondering how the humans had prevented this from happening. Lieutenant Neon had been the signal coordinator for the Andromeda sector, which included 47 different star systems. She had a special gift for understanding communication patterns that made messages flow smoothly across the galaxy, but now she was gone and the communication network was falling apart. The alien technicians who replaced her could send messages from one planet to another, but they could not manage the complex dance of signals that kept 47 systems talking at the same time. Messages started getting delayed, mixed up, and sometimes lost completely. Trade negotiations between different alien species began failing because important messages arrived too late or were delivered to the wrong people. Military commanders received battle plans that were meant for supply officers. Supply officers got medical reports that should have gone to hospitals. Fleet Admiral Korgoth watched his communication network collapse like a house made of cards. He had always taken smooth communication for granted, but now he was learning that keeping messages flowing required skills that only humans possessed. The network had been designed by humans, maintained by humans, and understood only by human. Ship captains began reporting that they could not talk to their Home bases' navigation information was getting scrambled, causing ships to get lost in space. Supply convoys were going to the wrong planets because their destination coordinates were mixed up with other messages. The military machine that had seemed so powerful when humans were running it was now becoming a dangerous mess. Admiral Korgoth realized that human communication officers had been doing much more than just passing messages along. They had been preventing disasters that he never even knew were possible. Dr. Jihoon's medical treatments had seemed simple when he was teaching them to alien doctors, but now that he was gone, the alien doctors were discovering that his treatments required understanding that went far deeper than just following instructions. His medicines worked differently on different alien species in ways that were not written in any textbook. Hospital Director Velnara watched her medical staff struggle with patients who had diseases that Dr. Jihoon used to cure easily. The alien doctors had all the same medicines and equipment, but they could not get the same results. The medicines that had worked perfectly under human guidance were now failing. The sophisticated diagnostic machines that Dr. Jihoon had calibrated were producing readings that no one could interpret correctly. The machines could detect diseases, but the alien doctors did not know how to use that information to help their patients. Many aliens who would have lived under human medical care were now dying. Surgery procedures that had become routine when human doctors were helping were now extremely dangerous. The alien surgeons had watched humans perform these operations hundreds of times, but watching and doing were completely different things. The steady hands and quick thinking that made human doctors special could not be learned from books. Emergency rooms across the galaxy began filling up with patients that alien doctors could not help. The medical system that had seemed so advanced was actually completely dependent on human knowledge and human intuition. Without humans, the Empire medical care was going backwards by centuries. Agricultural worlds that fed billions of aliens across the galaxy started having crop failures. The farming systems that had been designed by human botanists were incredibly complex networks that balanced soil, water, nutrients, and pest control in ways that looked simple but were actually very sophisticated. Botanist Hyunwoo had spent years perfecting these agricultural systems, but he had never written down exactly how he made all the different parts work together. His farming methods required constant small adjustments based on weather changes, soil conditions, and plant health that alien farmers could not detect. Governor Thexmarin watched food production drop by more than half in just 3 weeks. The automated farming systems that had worked perfectly under human supervision were now producing crops that were small, weak, and often diseased. The alien farmers followed all the procedures, but they could not make the magic happen. Panic buying started in the cities. As people realized that their food supply was in danger, store shelves became empty and food prices went up so high that many aliens could not afford to eat. The empire that had seemed so stable was discovering that their stability depended on humans they had treated badly. The industrial manufacturing plants that made everything from clothes to spacecraft were also falling apart. Without human engineers, the production systems that had run smoothly for decades began having quality control problems that got worse every day. Production Director Korvaleth faced the impossible task of maintaining manufacturing standards without the human insights that had made efficiency possible. Assembly lines that had been designed for human oversight needed constant attention, but alien workers could not spot problems before they became disasters. Product defect rates went up so high that customers began refusing to buy Empire-manufactured goods. Delivery schedules that had been reliable for years became completely unpredictable. Factory workers, who had been proud of their high-quality products, were now embarrassed by the junk they were producing. The energy grid that powered the entire galaxy began experiencing brownouts and blackouts as alien technicians struggled to balance power loads that humans had managed without thinking. The power distribution networks were incredibly complex systems that required constant adjustments to prevent overloads. Energy coordinator Zethkrol watched power grids failing across multiple star systems at the same time. Hospitals lost power during important surgeries. Communication networks went offline. Transportation systems stopped working. The Empire technological superiority was revealing itself to be completely dependent on human engineering. Dr. Yunji looked around her medical office one last time. She had worked on Kepler Station for 8 years helping sick aliens get better. The walls were covered with certificates and awards that the alien doctors had given her, but she knew they only gave them to her because they felt guilty about treating her badly. The alien patients loved Dr. Yunji because she was kind and gentle. She always found ways to help them feel better, even when their own alien doctors said nothing could be done. She had magic hands that could heal anyone but the alien doctors. Always said she was just lucky now she was packing her medical equipment into boxes. The alien doctors watched her work. They looked worried because they knew they could not do the same thing she could do. They had watched her work for years, but they never really understood how she did it. Dr. Yunji had written down all her medical procedures in detailed books. She left the books on the desk for the alien doctors to read, but she knew that reading about medicine and actually doing medicine were very different things. The alien doctors would soon find out how different they were. She picked up her special scanner that could find diseases inside alien bodies before they became dangerous. She had built this scanner herself because the regular medical equipment was not good enough. The alien doctors had asked her many times to teach them how to use it, but they never understood her explanations. Dr. Yunji looked at the alien doctors one more time. They were trying to act like they would be fine without her, but she could see fear in their eyes. They knew that many patients would die without her help, but they were too proud to ask her to stay. She walked to the transport ship that would take her away from Kepler Station. Behind her, the medical bay that had been the best hospital in the galaxy suddenly felt empty and useless. The alien doctors stood there holding her instruction books, knowing that books could not replace the human touch that made healing possible. Engineer Young Ho was working on the quantum generators for the last time. He had been taking care of these machines for 12 years, making sure they never broke down. The generators provided power for the whole Proxima colony, and they were very complicated machines that needed constant attention. The alien engineers who were supposed to replace him stood nearby watching everything he did. They had advanced degrees from the best alien universities, but they looked confused and worried. Young Ho had tried to teach them about the generators many times, but they never really understood. The generators were not just machines, they were like living things that needed to be understood and cared for. Young Ho could feel when something was wrong with them even before the warning lights came on. He could hear tiny sounds that told him when parts needed to be replaced. He showed the alien engineers how to check the energy levels and how to balance the power flow, but he could see in their eyes that they were just memorizing steps without understanding why those steps were important. Understanding machines was something that came naturally to humans but was very difficult for aliens. Young Ho sealed the main control panel and gave the access codes to the head alien engineer. The alien took the codes with shaking hands because he knew that these machines were now his responsibility. If they broke down, the whole colony would lose power and thousands of aliens would be in danger. As Young Ho walked away from the generators, he could already hear warning sounds starting. The alien engineers were panicking because they did not know what the sounds meant. Young Ho wanted to help them, but he knew that humans had to leave. The aliens had made their choice, and now they would have to live with it. Professor Sun He stood in her laboratory looking at 15 years of research. She had learned how to change dead planets into beautiful worlds where aliens could live and grow food. Her work had created homes for millions of alien families, but she had never received proper credit for her discoveries. The alien scientists who worked with her always published papers using her research, but they never put her name on the papers. They said humans were not qualified to be real scientists, even though all their best ideas came from human research. She had notebooks filled with secrets about how to make planets healthy. Her research showed how to create rain, how to make soil rich, how to bring life to empty worlds. But this knowledge required more than just following instructions. It required understanding how all living things work together. Professor Senhi packed her research into special containers that would protect it during the long journey to wherever humans were going. The alien scientists begged her to leave copies of her work, but she refused. They had stolen her ideas for too long, and now they would have to figure things out by themselves. She looked at the alien scientists who had worked in her laboratory. They were crying because they knew they could not do her work without her help. They had spent years watching her transform dead worlds into gardens, but they had never understood the magic that made it possible. The transport ship was waiting outside. Professor Sunhee walked toward it carrying her life work with her behind her. The alien scientists were already arguing about who would take over her projects. None of them wanted the responsibility because they all knew they would fail. Communications Officer Dayon sat at her control station for the last time. She had been managing the Empire communication network for 10 years, making sure messages got to the right places at the right times. The network connected thousands of worlds across the galaxy, and it was incredibly complex. The alien technicians who were supposed to replace her looked terrified as they watched her work. She could see patterns in the communication signals that told her when problems were starting. The aliens could only see numbers and graphs, but Dan could see the whole network like a living thing. She had redesigned the communication system 3 times to make it faster and more reliable. Each time the alien managers took credit for the improvements and gave her no recognition, but now they were realizing that their communication system was actually her creation. Down began shutting down her personal access codes and transferring control to the alien technicians. She tried to explain how the network worked, but she could see that they did not understand. The network was not just technology, it was art, and aliens did not understand human art. The alien technicians had instruction manuals that were thousands of pages long, but Dan knew that manuals could not teach them how to feel the rhythm of the network. Messages were already starting to get delayed and mixed up as the alien technicians struggled with systems they did not understand. Captain Minseok commanded the last group of ships leaving the Empire. He looked back at the worlds where humans had lived and worked for 50 years. Those worlds were now empty of human life, but they were filled with human achievements that the aliens could not maintain. His ships carried more than just people. They carried the memory of human civilization in the Empire libraries, full of human research art created by human artists, and most importantly, the knowledge of how to build a better future. The aliens were keeping the planets, but humans were taking the wisdom. As the ships jumped into hyperspace, Captain Minseok knew that the real journey was just beginning. Humans were free for the first time in 50 years, free to build something new, something better, something that would show the galaxy what humans could really do when they were not held back by alien prejudice behind them. The Empire was already starting to fall apart, but the aliens did not know it, yet they thought losing humans would be a minor inconvenience. They had no idea that they had just lost the foundation of their entire civilization. Minho walked into the big room where all the alien leaders sat. He had been waiting for this day for 3 years. The room was huge, with strange lights hanging from the ceiling that changed colors. Every few seconds, the alien council members looked at him like he was some kind of pet that learned a new trick. The insect leader, named Vexstar, made clicking sounds with his mouth. He thought humans were funny little creatures who sometimes had good ideas but were not really smart. The snake person, called Lord Scales, moved his long tongue in and out, which meant he was laughing at something. The bird alien with purple feathers just stared at Minho with her big yellow eyes. Minho stood straight and tall. He was not afraid anymore. He had been afraid for many years when he first came to work for the Empire. The aliens always acted like they were better than humans. They gave humans the hardest jobs but never said thank you. They expected humans to fix everything but treated them like servants. Behind Minho sat other humans in the watching area. Hana was there. She was the best engineer in the whole galaxy. She could fix machines that even the smartest aliens could not understand, but when she fixed something, the aliens always acted surprised, like they did not expect her to be smart enough. Dr. Suman was also watching. She had saved millions of alien lives by creating new medicines. The aliens on 17 different planets were alive because of her work, but the alien doctors always took credit for her discoveries. They never mentioned her name when they talked about the cures. Captain Taeyong sat in the corner. He had stopped 3 big wars from happening. He was so good at talking to angry aliens that he could make enemies become friends, but the alien politicians always said they solved the problems themselves. They acted like Taeyong was just there to bring them coffee. Scientist Jihoon was there too. He had found new ways to make energy that powered whole cities. The aliens used his inventions every day, but they never invited him to the science meetings. They said humans were not advanced enough to understand real science, even though Jihoon taught them everything they knew for 50 years. Humans had been the problem solvers of the galaxy. When something broke, humans fixed it. When there was a war, humans stopped it. When people were sick, humans healed them. When aliens needed new technology, humans invented it, but the aliens never gave humans any respect. The worst part happened 2 weeks ago. The Empire decided to move all human families from their homes. The aliens wanted the planets where humans lived because they found valuable metals underground. They did not ask the humans, they did not offer to pay them. They just said humans had to leave their homes and move to worse planets. That was when Minho decided enough was enough. He called all the human leaders from across the galaxy. They had a big meeting on the human ship called Hope. Everyone was angry. Everyone was tired of being treated badly. They decided to do something that would shock the whole galaxy. Minho looked at the alien council members. They were not paying attention to him. They were looking at their computers and talking to each other. They acted like he was not important enough to listen to this made Minho even more sure that he was doing the right thing. Vexstar finally looked up from his computer and made some clicking sounds that meant hurry up. The other aliens laughed because they thought it was funny that a human wanted to talk to them. Lord Scales moved his tongue again and said something in his hissing language that made the other aliens laugh louder. Minho took a deep breath and spoke in a loud, clear voice that everyone could hear. He said that humans were tired of being treated like they were not important. He said humans had given everything to help the Empire but got nothing back except orders and insults. The aliens stopped laughing and started paying attention. Minho told them about all the things humans had done for them. He talked about the wars humans stopped, the diseases humans cured, the machines humans built, and the problems humans solved. He said humans made the Empire strong, but the Empire made humans feel weak. Vexstar made angry clicking sounds. He said humans should be grateful that the Empire let them live in space. He said humans were lucky to have jobs working for superior alien races. He said humans should stop complaining and do what they were told. Lord Scales agreed with Vexstar. He said humans were useful servants, but they were still just servants. He said the Empire owned everything in space, including the humans and their planets. He said humans had no right to complain about anything. The bird alien with purple feathers said humans were like tools in a toolbox. They were good for fixing things, but tools do not get to make decisions about how they are used. She said humans should be happy that such advanced races wanted to use them for important work. This was exactly what Minho expected them to say. It proved that the aliens would never change their minds about humans. They would always see humans as inferior beings who existed only to serve them. This made what Minho was about to do feel completely right. Minho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone makes when they know a secret that will surprise everyone. He looked at each alien council member one by one, making sure they were all listening to what he would say. Next, he told them that humans were leaving. Not just him, not just the humans in this room, all humans everywhere in the galaxy, every human on every planet, in every job working for every alien race. They were all going away together. The aliens started making confused sounds. Vexstar clicked faster than before. Lord Scales stopped moving his tongue. The bird alien opened her yellow eyes very wide. They did not understand what Minho meant. Minho explained that human ships were already at every human settlement in the galaxy. Every human family was packing their things. Every human worker was leaving their job. Every human scientist was taking their research. Every human doctor was closing their hospital. Every human engineer was shutting down their machines. Within 3 days, there would be no humans left in Empire space anywhere. The aliens could keep all the planets and all the money and all the power. They could try to do everything by themselves, like they always said they could. The room became very quiet. The aliens looked at each other with worried expressions. They started to realize that maybe humans did more important work than they thought. Maybe losing all the humans at once would cause some problems, but it was too late to change anything. The human ships were already moving. The biggest move in the history of the galaxy had started, and nothing could stop it now. The Empire was about to learn what life was like without the humans they had taken for granted for so long. Minho turned around and walked out of the room. Behind him, the aliens started arguing with each other in loud voices. They were beginning to understand that they had made a very big mistake.